I want to ask you about your private sector experience and maybe go into a little bit of detail in what it is to build a massive company in the DRC. What is the biggest misperception between building $1 billion company and when you meet people who say their particular struggles in the country, I'm not sure I'm going to invest? I know you touched on a few things like understanding the regulation as a need. Is it often just a regulatory misunderstanding? What are some of the factors? Because what a disconnect between a Canadian company building what's soon to be the world's biggest copper production, and of course what people sometimes read in the news in an isolated context.
Yes, Garrett, is a very good question. I tell you, I left the country and went to work abroad. Worked in South Africa, had a stint in the US, in the mines and etc. And today, and in Africa, I built a gold mine in West Africa, in Mali. And today I decided to come back. Friends of mine started calling me from all over the world. But Louis, you crazy. Why are you going back there? There's war, man. Because I didn't go back to Kinshasa. I came back to build a gold mine northeast DRC. So anyone sitting here in Canada or in the US or around the world thinks northeast DRC is the capital of raping, of militia activities, armed groups and all that. But you know what happened, Garrett? I came because I wanted to feel the vibes and go there first, understand what are the challenges. First night, I was very surprised. The team took me around in a bar, in a bush bar. We had to have their own local drinks there till 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning with quad bikes. We drove back through these bush little roads, very peaceful. Went to sleep and I was looking for the key for my door. There were no key for the door. They said, well, for what? We don't need that here. It's as peaceful as it can get. First misconception. People think that it's a hell there. Well, it's not hell. It's perhaps closer to paradise than hell, actually. But people need to take time to go see. You know? It doesn't help coming to Kinshasa to negotiate a mining contract, sign a deal in Kinshasa without going to site. So I think investors should find time to get to know the place, to get to understand how it works. There are challenges, make no mistake, but there's a way to manage them. And if you get a better understanding of people, of the culture, of the regulatory framework, you're in a better position to do your own homework and see, well, this is for me or this is not for me. But again, I had a conversation with an American congressman 2 months ago in Kinshasa, for Pennsylvania, I think. They were interested in critical minerals, etc. And I told him all that. And he ended up telling me, but sir, you know, we're still concerned about governance and corruption and etc. I said, sir, I agree entirely with you. But the decision to invest in DRC, like in any country of the world, it's a binary decision. You're either in or you're not. But remember, if you're not, I can promise you one thing. You're going to count the cost of lost opportunity in the future, and it's going to be huge to you. Take it from me. Because Chinese who came to invest, no one rolled out the red carpet for them. They came, they saw the opportunity, they brought capital and technology. You think they were naive? They didn't see the risks? No, it's about managing risks. So to answer your question, it's about managing risks.
And how much of the management of that risk, because often people, I think of risk from a governance or regulatory perspective, things like finding local partners. I mean, one of the most resounding successes we've heard is just the importance at fora like these to connect with people who become long-term trusted allies and who have an understanding of the market the same way that, of course, Canadians welcoming DRC counterparts would play that role. Could you speak to some of that in terms of advice? And I'm thinking here of companies who are about to really take that decision and who will be joining us. We'll be back in the DRC next year, of course, because they're preparing. And I'm sure they'd love to hear what the minister and former Chamber of Mines president has to say on that.
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do there to better guide prospective investors. People can easily get confused because there are too many players around and you're not quite sure who to rely on, etc. Whereas if we could have a one-stop shop where someone can come and say, well, this is what I want to do, and the whole spaghetti of administration, etc., is behind. So someone can take and guide him through that. This is what we're working towards. But right now, if you come to, say, for instance, natural resources, commodities, and things like you want to invest in mining, in exploration, and things like that, I think the Chamber of Mines is a good place to start. Or in any other business, the Federation of Enterprises for Congo, which we call FEC, which is the corporation of all businesses, and it's very well organized in all sectors: agriculture, transport, tourism, mining, and you name them. I think it's a good place to start. And from there, they can guide you through all the permitting process which is needed.
And if you look at the mining sector now and the sort of catalytic role of natural resource development, what are some of the other sectors for those in the room and those online that you would say are very important areas for Canadian companies to consider in terms of the broader impact of mining on a range of sectors? I know hospitality, for example, I mean, amazing resorts, for example, like Katebi Beach Lodge. But yeah, your thoughts, Minister?
I think agribusiness comes to my mind. Um, well, when I simply see the amount of food we're importing, that simply tells me there's a huge market for it. So if one can establish agro-industrial units to transform local, because fruits are rotting. We have fruits, mangoes, oranges, and etc. But why on earth do we need to go import orange juices and mango juices? I mean, surely they're almost free, almost free to sort of grab and just process that. So I'll say these are the low-hanging fruits. To start with agro-industry. Energy is also a place to invest. Although energy, I always say to people, energy is not a commodity you sell to a profit. In fact, if you look at all the countries in the world, domestic consumption is subsidized by the states because it's too expensive actually to generate power, transport, and distribute it. Energy is an input to an industrial activity. So you got to couple energy and industrial activity and decide which industrial activity you want. And again, my first thought will be agro-industry. Northeast of Congo, for instance. In many parts of Congo, you have cotton, you have coffee, you have all these commodities which are there raw. All they need is units to transform them and add value and create jobs.
Copper and the various commodities in the DRC are in abundance, and many countries around the world are talking about their national security in relation to things like net zero and many of the minerals you have. What's your message to business in terms of understanding that broader geopolitical context, but also just continuing to stay focused as businesses? And I think about Canadian companies like Ivanhoe, who've thrived amidst what many identify as challenges or risks.
So, and again, this is mineral endowment that we've received, I will say, from God the Father. Mines in DRC are a lot greener in terms of today's standards. You look at Ivanhoe Mines, Kamoa, for instance. You look at the small footprint it's got. You look at the quality of the deposit. You take all these factors, it's less polluting than mines you'll see elsewhere. And I don't want to name destinations because I don't want to embarrass them. But no, DRC from an environmental point of view is a good place to be because of its natural assets, just the way they are coming to us, and so everyone is welcome.
If I may, on a personal note, the transition from company executive, corporate executive to minister, what are some of the things that you could tell the private sector you may not have realized now that you're sitting on the other side of the table in government? What should they know when they engage you that you wish you knew if you were engaging yourself before entering public life?
Yeah, it's a very good question. When I was a mining boy, I had a very simple definition of mining. Mining is it consists of bringing capital and technology, taking what is on the ground and transforming it in three things. Dividends to the shareholders, taxes to the states, and then something you do for local communities around for them to have a better life. Period. That's mining. That's all it is. It's not entirely wrong, actually. It is. This is what mining should be, what it is. But when you are on the state side, you realize it's not just communities living around a deposit. It's 100 million of people living in an area which is measuring 2.3 million square kilometers. 100 million people who need to have dignity in life. So the little wealth you've created, you've got to find a way to share it equitably among all of them because they deserve it, the sons and daughters of the land. And it can get quite tricky from there. So if private sector and public sector can come together and get the same understanding of the challenges ahead, I tell you, private sector can do a lot. For instance, infrastructure deficit. Well, we can enter into discussions to have less taxes paid and a better fiscal condition, etc., so that you help the state build a road, a section of the railway, or a hydropower station and things like that, and then you have incentives for that. But all these discussions, you need to create a space for it. Where, as I said, everyone understands that you don't only have rights, you also have obligations. And then start from there, and also include the civil society in the discussion, because in that tripartite, this is where things happen. The state sure needs to ensure, and it's an obligation from the state, to ensure peace and stability and security, stability of the fiscal law, and make sure that a business investment is protected, that you're not going to change the rules of the game, and make sure that they succeed. Government should make sure of that. And the private sector also has obligations. They must bring capital and technology. They must abide by the rules of the country. They must be good corporate citizens. They must help local communities to be better off and transfer skills and knowledge and all that. And then local community also has a role to play and an obligation. They must be part of this process, and they must be accountable for every dollar that comes into a community project and account for it, and make sure that if everyone understands his obligations, we are in a much, much better place to make things happen.
What's been the role of Canada to date that stands out for you in terms of Canada's existing engagement with the DRC through the private sector? Because I think perhaps that's a story that sometimes I hear more of Ivanhoe often in Cape Town at the mining indaba, of course here at PDAC. But, for Canadians to know they've got a huge player leading on the continent, any things there that you think people should be aware of?
Everywhere I look back at my past mining experience, whether it's with Ron Gold, which was bought by Barrick, or whether I look at Ivanhoe mines, I can go as far back as Motor Gold mines and all this Canadian money. This corner here in town here, where you get the BMOs, you get the stock market holders, all that money came from here, actually. Came from here in Canada. In fact, I grew very frustrated over the past couple of years, not seeing this flow of money coming anymore. It is as if Canadians got scared of Congo at the end. But quite frankly, all the big mines in Congo, majority of them, seed capital came from here, I must say. And so through junior exploration companies, because they're the ones who always go first, and then they get gobbled up by major companies who have more capital to develop the project and others. But it all starts with those junior companies who have the appetite for risk. They take money, they go in the middle of nowhere, they fund the deposit, but then they get to the end of the cycle, and then they have to move to the next adventure, and then they have to let big money companies take over. So it will be good that Canada start again playing this role because today we see dominance of China. We will be more comfortable to see multiple players and not a monopoly of one group of investors against others. I mean, and again, remember the mineral endowment of DRC in such that all the mines which are in operations today, all the deposits known, it's less than 10%. I would say even perhaps less than 5% of the true mineral endowment of the country. So you have of the 90% there out there of a new deal. A new deal where those who have the guts to come to do the homework, as I said, to understand the regulatory framework, to build up a business model which is robust enough to team up with a local team, there'll be another success waiting to happen for them.
You know, people look at China, and you mentioned you look at multiple people involved in the DRC as an objective. What has China done that did you think is noteworthy? But perhaps what is it that the DRC is looking for? Because sometimes people may assume if we do more of what China does, we'll have a presence that is accelerated. But when you speak about multiple actors, what are the specific areas of engagement or tools of engagement that DRC is looking for without, focus on the way any particular country is engaging? What would be the ideal?
I think it will be risky for me to judge or give an opinion on China methods and models. I know one thing. China, they know what they want. And they are executing the strategy with military effectiveness. Don't care about politics, don't care about anything but what they want. And they go for it. I think it's a lesson for all the countries in the world, including ourselves. As I say, we live in turbulent geopolitics today. The world is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. What is left of the world today is to know what you want and what are strategic partners you're gonna travel the journey with. That's all you got left. So DRC is at that crossing of the roads. We know what you want. We want mineral beneficiation. We cannot benefit 3% on that continuum that is today worth $10 trillion plus. We cannot continue to operate in value destruction mode. We have to take the steps to say, well, maybe we cannot start building a Tesla car today in the DRC, but you can start producing battery-grade material from our cobalt, from our nickel, and so forth. And start gradually taking from 3% to 7% to 10, 15. A long journey always starts with a first step and then a second step. So this is what DRC want very clearly, and very clear in our head, in our mind. And in terms of strategic partners, we are open. We are open for business, really. We lack multiple partners because they have different strengths. China, they have the way of doing business. Canadians have their way of doing business. Australia is also a good school in mining. They have their own way of doing also business. We need all these partners around us, and so that we can move along the development of DRC.
And in terms of the next 10 to 20 years, if you look at the ideal, you spoke about your grandchild, what would the contribution be in a best possible outcome of the mining industry to the DRC? And then I'm going to add to the world, because of course we live in a world where net zero is a global ambition for many.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to start with first thing first. We need to lay the foundation today of what this great country will become tomorrow. And these foundations are some of the things I've shown in the presentation today. Infrastructure. Let's not get distracted here. If you don't have good roads, good railways, energy, etc., everything else can remain wishful thinking. Yeah, we need to focus on having good roads, having railways, deep sea ports, electricity. These are really critical. And of course, our governance. You need to have good governance, good policies. In that mix, if you can focus on these issues only, we've set the scene for for a better tomorrow, for the generations to come.
Fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, dignitaries, Minister Louis Watum, thank you for being back with us once again this year, and congratulations on everything you're doing in the DRC
You're welcome.
and for the continent.